You're now listening to the sound of sanity. This sound will continue for the duration of the program. Hey, welcome to Sound of Sanity. I'm Nathan. That is Ben right there.
Hello.
He is assistant pastor at Church of the King. And Jake, the head pastor of Church of the King, the CEO of Warhorn Media, the man, the myth, the legend, is not here.
Very sad.
I see an empty table.
A microphone without use.
If these shadows do not come to pass. Is that what it
If these shadows are not changed.
If these shadows are not changed. Or maybe if these shadows remain unchanged.
That sounds right, yeah.
That sounds right. I don't know. The rhythm, the Dickensian rhythms, which I mostly know from adaptation,
Yep.
are very familiar.
Yeah.
And yet they do not always stick precisely in
Yep.
my head.
Yep.
Mankind was my business. The dealings of my the dealings of my trade were but a drop in the comprehensive ocean of my business. Something like that.
Yeah. That's pretty great.
It is pretty great. That Dickens, he could string together some words.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of people who can string together words, my Twitter account, Jake's not here. Did I say that?
You didn't.
He's
I
not.
mean, we heavily implied it.
We heavily implied it, yeah. Jake's not here, and none of us will be here next week. This is a check-in episode. We are in the dog days of summer, and I'm going on vacation. Ben already had his vacation. I don't know what Jake's doing. He's too important to go on vacation. But we've got all that coming up, and so we just thought we'd do a little check-in episode instead of leaving you high and dry. But we want to talk about a Twitter thread that went bananas. The biggest Twitter thread that has ever happened on the Twitter account at Nathan Alberson.
Yep.
Bigger, I think, than the controversial ones we've talked about in the past. But what was this Twitter thread, Ben?
Oh, it was a thread about children's fantasy books. Recommendations outside of Lewis and Tolkien.
Yes, it was basically, I'm sorry, my phone is in my pocket, and instead I should have it pulled out so I can actually look at this thing for reference. So it's possible. Now, of course, I would never employ any ghostwriters or do anything like that, but it is
No.
possible that this thread was ghostwritten by one Benjamin J. Sulzer.
Maybe.
We'll never know, though.
Nope.
Now, all right, so here we go. Your kids have already devoured Narnia and Lord of the Rings. Here are some other fantasy novels to edify, terrify, and amuse without pumping their minds full of garbage. Ben, do you just want to give the list to people? And
Yeah, sure.
Tell them what's great about each of these things?
Oh, I can do that. This is a fun list.
Yeah.
It's a fun list. I was like, man, how many good fantasy novels for kids are there? And then I realized that there were a bunch
There's
that
at
I was
least,
a fan of.
4 Game of Thrones novels?
That's right. More on the way.
More on the way.
Eventually. Aren't there 5 Game of Thrones novels now?
Oh, I don't know. That he's been working on.
I'm pretty sure that there are 5 now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I haven't kept up, listener. Haven't kept up. Did read the first 3 20 years ago, something like that. Shouldn't have done it, but I was younger and less mature than I am now.
Never cracked a Game of Thrones novel. I'm a more sanctified person than you are.
It's very true.
I did watch, I think, the first season of the show, and then I was like, hey, this has a lot of nudity and rape and stuff, and probably shouldn't keep watching it.
Probably not.
And then I stopped.
No George Martin is on this kids' fantasy list. So we've got, for starters, we've got Edith Nesbit. And I just put a novel or a book by each of these people just to get people started. 5 Children and It. Edith Nesbit, turn of the century lady who you could argue invented modern children's fantasy. She is a really excellent writer and a lot of fun. And she wrote books that tend to have a lot of sort of comic misadventures in them. They're also sweet, sincere, melancholy. They're kind of all the things that you want in a kid's fantasy book. So 5 Children and It is about 5 children who find, a Samiad, I think it's called, the sand fairy. Grants wishes. It's this creature, but it's irritated at having to grant wishes. And it grants wishes in such a way that they always go very wrong, and the kids have a lot of misadventures. It's really fun. And then moving on down the list, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum. I know a lot of people haven't read this because they've seen the movie. And they're like, why would I need to read the book? The answer is, the book is nothing like the movie. It's not a musical. There's no songs. It's quite a bit more action-adventure focused. The movie doesn't have the scarecrow breaking the necks of these crows that are attacking the party as they journey towards the Wicked Witch of the West. It's probably good the movie doesn't have that. But in the book, it feels like it's just all very fairy tale type stuff, like the kind of thing you would read in a line in the Brothers Grimm. This book is full of that kind of stuff. It's really fun for boys, not just for girls, because it's action adventure.
Yeah, I feel like the whole Wizard of Oz thing is interesting because people keep trying to do it. Like, it's a property that gets rebooted every few years. There was that terrible Sam Raimi,
Never saw it,
James Franco film. I forget what it was even called.
I can't think of it either.
There's the musical Wicked. It's like the kind of thing that keeps on chugging in the pop culture. And yet the Baum books seem like they've been completely lost to the sands of times in terms of ongoing discourse.
People still read them, but discourse, you're right. They're not so much in the popular conversation anymore, and they're interesting. We could have a much longer conversation about that. I feel like maybe it's a topic for us someday. Maybe it's a topic for the bookening. But Baum was an interesting guy, and the extent to which you think of the books as sort of proto-feminist or not is interesting. You could make an argument that they are, but I would still recommend them to your kids. And they're really fun fantasies. They're extremely whimsical and inventive. It's like you turn the page, here's another character in another place. Here's another idea. Baum is just very generous with his ideas in these books.
Is it the kind of thing that would be irritating for someone who likes their fantasy to have some rules and some logic?
I would say that every little world has its own sort of self-contained logic. At least that's how he works. It's like, we're here, so here's the logic of this place. These are the vegetable people. This is what they're like. Turns out they're bad. They have their own rules.
Right.
And I think that's what Baum does at his best, is he creates little worlds with rules, and then if he breaks the rules, it usually feels fair. He wrote, I can't remember how many books. Too bad I'm not. It's been a while since I've read them. And I want to say I missed a couple of his books because they weren't at my local library when I was a kid. We had to rely on a local library when I was a kid. No Amazon to order the books.
Alas.
And I don't think I ever read outside of Baum to the other authors who wrote Oz books. But I'm willing to. Maybe they stink. I know some people say that they're bad. But
you want a little taste of something a little bit more like the books? The movie Return to Oz is
very Ozzy.
Very, very Ozzy, yeah. And a good movie, but also pretty creepy.
Pretty creepy, yeah. Yeah, that one maybe takes some liberties towards creepiness. Like, not all Oz books are that creepy at all. So if that would give you one impression. But it's fair. It's distilled from creepy things that are in the books. And Oz is fun. It really is.
But what about Edward Eger? Eger.
I'm pretty sure. He was another Brit, like Edith Nesbit. I didn't say that. She's British. And he was clearly just following in her footsteps. He's got witty, lively prose. He's not her equal in, like, melancholy or any the emotional depth that you can find in Nesbit. Nesbit's a little more of a romanticist like Tolkien, like there's this kind of longing for a far-off world or for times that will never come again. Eger's not so much that, for both better and worse. He's more like, these kids are going to have fun misadventures. So I put the book Half Magic, which just started reading again with my wife, and the kids find this coin, and it grants wishes, but it grants half your wish. So you're like, I wish I were home right now. Suddenly, you're stranded in the middle of nowhere, halfway to your house. If you were like 10 miles away, you're 5 miles there. You're like, what just happened? It's really fun.
That is fun.
It's really fun. He's very clever, creates likable characters. He's a good writer. And then we've got Diana Wynne Jones, another Brit. Later in the century, I want to say she died 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Died in the Audis, I think.
Yeah. Diana Wynne Jones is awesome. She's not the prose equal of Nesbit or anything, but boy, she's a good writer. She's a genuinely good writer, and she is a pretty awesome plot writer, and she does not condescend to children. None of these writers really condescend to children. That's a nice thing about good children's books. They elevate them. And Jones asks a lot of kids. She asks a lot of them because her plots are not easy. They work almost like detective stories sometimes. She's going to give you this clue and that clue. She's going to wrap things up. And if you're not thinking carefully, you'll miss what actually happened. And I always liked that as a kid. I liked the feeling it was over my head. She's also funny and charming and romantic. And if you read the wrong thing, a little on the creepy side of pagan. And if you read the right thing, then she's on the right side of pagan.
Creepy and pagan.
Yeah, that's right. And not every one of her books would be a recommendation of mine, but Howl's Moving Castle certainly is. It's very fun.
Yeah, I saw the movie.
What's that?
I don't have to read the book. I saw the movie.
Oh, yeah, no. You really missed out. You've lost this battle.
Yeah, no, I've actually done both. And the movie stinks, and the book is wonderful.
I've done both too. Yeah, the movie is not much like the book. The book is a charming romantic fantasy.
The movie's like an anti-war something
Screed.
or Screed, yeah.
That breaks down and is very dumb and annoying. And nope, the book is great. The book has fun characters, fun dialogue, fun conceit, and it's very clever. It will appeal to boys and girls. Highly recommend it. All right, moving on to yet another Brit. We will get back to more Americans. Baum, of course, an American, famously. Watership Down, the best talking animal fantasy of all time. Stand by that. It is a weird book. It is a beautiful book. It's about rabbits trying to find a new home. They go on rabbit adventures. They do not wear clothes. They do not use swords, but they do talk, and they are all different. You've got like the leader. You've got the rabbit who sees mystical visions. You've got the rabbit who's a warrior. They have fights against, it feels like political I don't think it really is political commentary. Exactly. It's just an adventure story. But they have fights against these weird, like this cult of rabbits that...
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, what would you say, human nature commentary.
There's plenty of human nature
commentary. It's not annoying
commentary.
and political like modern things are, but it is
right.
like, well, when people organize themselves in societies, these are the kinds of ways they can go wrong.
That's right. This one's a cult.
Right.
And so but it's all rabbits, of course. There's a lot of action, actually. There's a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
And it gets pretty violent, but in a fun fantasy way. That's one thing. If you do fantasy novels well with animals, you can get away with things that in a human novel you wouldn't let your kids read.
Mm-hmm.
But this book is awesome.
Yeah, I love Watership Down. I really don't understand. That one actually got a decent amount of pushback on Twitter. There were a lot of people, more people saying, yes, yeah, of course, great, love it. But then there were the people who just said it scared me, or it's too violent, or why not just read Redwall? And I love Redwall. I'm a big fan of those books. Get hugely repetitive, but they're enormously fun.
They are super fun.
And especially the early ones I like. I'd have great affection and nostalgia for. But Watership Down is special.
Watership Down is special. It's some kind of masterpiece. Like
it's masterpiece.
It's literature, right?
And I think, I don't know, I think kids can handle it. Like it's maybe the wrong sort of kid might be sensitive to some of it. Yeah. That's fine. Not everything's for everybody. But
yeah. But when I read it, oh man, it was like, I get to live in this world for 400 pages, 500 pages. I am so happy right now. It's like, it's one of those treasures you find as a kid, if you're that kind of kid.
The characters are incredibly enduring, too.
They are really great.
I said enduring.
You meant endearing.
Is what I meant, yes.
They're pretty enduring, but they're very endearing.
Minus the ones that famously don't endure.
That's right. Oh, moving on. Hey, another talking animal book by yet another Brit. Winnie the Pooh, of course.
Right. Everyone knows my bookening episode. I hate Winnie the Pooh. I hate A.A. Milne. What a jerk.
Oh, that's not true, I heard.
That's not true at all, but that was what people
took away. All right. Nathan likes A.A. Milne. He enjoys A.A. Milne. I enjoy A.A. Milne too. My wife is a big fan. I confess, I didn't really grow up with these. I remember growing up with them as references. My mom was a fan. I never got into them. I did not read them. Even now, I'm underread in Winnie the Pooh. But I like them.
Mm-hmm.
I like them. They're fun. They're witty. As a boy, what they don't do is fill the action-adventure side.
No, they don't.
I think that's what I was into as a boy. I was excited about the action-adventure side. I remember watching Winnie the Pooh cartoons, and that more often. And I feel like my mom must have read us some of these stories. I like them. I know that going back now, I would enjoy them even more. I have no doubt that I would.
Yeah, the thing we've always said on the book, I think, is we said that A.A. Milne had a complicated relationship with his son, the real Christopher Robin, and some of that had to do with the way perhaps that he sentimentalized childhood. And so we had some, you can go listen to the episode. We had some questions. We wanted to interrogate that. We didn't want to just accept that it's great because we love the book. And then we said he's such a master ironist that some of it maybe, it's not that it doesn't work for children, but it might even work better for adults.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow that turned into, we hate Winnie the Pooh and we don't think you should read him to his children and we're just monsters. But yes, of course we are monsters. Everyone knows,
right. But the other two parts,
the other parts
not true.
Are not true.
Yep.
And as an adult, I have a well-developed sense of irony, and I find these books enormously funny. Like laying aside the issue of kids, like they're just funny books. I mean, they're just good.
Yeah,
and they are much more sophisticated in their humor than the Disney cartoons that were adapted for them. Of course, read A.A. Milne. He's great, and his poetry is great.
Yeah, cool. Moving on, we get back to the Americans.
The Americans.
Yeah, you got Lloyd Alexander. A lot of people know Lloyd Alexander. They read his Prydain Chronicles.
Sure.
I hope I said that right, Prydain. I think when it was a reading word for me growing up. No one taught me how to say it, and I said Prydain, but that obviously sounds dumb. So I'd go with Prydain. And anyway, that's not Prydain Chronicles. I think are really fun, also uneven. Let's litigate that later. Don't hate me. I grew up with them. I loved them. I read most Lloyd Alexander books, and I reread most Lloyd Alexander books. I checked them out from the library over and over again, so I was a true fan. This is adult me talking. Anyway, there's some books that I feel like, hey, this is just great. This just works really well. Still, The Marvelous Misadventures of Sebastian, definitely a kid's adventure book, but man, is it fun. This guy is the fourth fiddle for this baron, and he makes a snide comment towards one of the Baron's guests, and he has to get fired because it's politics, baby. And then he finds himself on the road, and he's like a teenager or something, and he learns like Lloyd Alexander is a moralist.
Yeah.
And that's part of the charm of his books. And also sometimes when his moralizing is less sophisticated than you wish it were, it's like, I wish that were a really good lesson instead of a kind of okay lesson. He can get a little tedious. But this book, I just have fond memories of Sebastian's adventures, dealing with a cursed fiddle and a princess in disguise and creepy cut-purse assassin guy and an evil nobleman scheming for the throne and a circus troupe and a giant cat that adopts Sebastian and rides on his shoulder. I always wanted that cat after that. I wanted a cat that would be like a dog who rode on your shoulder. It'd be awesome. And man, it's really fun. It's fun. It's quick.
What is the Lord Alexander series that is sort of Greco-Roman?
Greco-Roman? There's only one book I know of like that. That's The Arcadians. It's a single novel.
Yeah, okay.
The Arcadians is fun. You've read that one?
I think so. I know I've read some Lloyd Alexander as a kid, and what I remember chiefly actually is the one that I read, whichever one it was, had that moral sense, and I didn't really like it that much. Like, I liked the world building. I liked the characters. There was a lot that I responded to.
Right.
But there was like, I don't know. I just remember this protagonist is kind of dumb and making a fool of himself one way or another. And the girl in the book was way cooler than he was. And I kind of resented it one way or another.
Yeah. I think probably a lot of his catalog is marred by stuff like that. People would defend the Prydain Chronicles. I'd say that they're uneven. I would go back and read them. I'd enjoy them. But I think I'd see a lot of the kind of stuff Nathan is talking about.
Is that is that the Black Cauldron? Is that where that comes from?
The Black Cauldron is book 2 of that series. That's right.
Famously made into it. Well, not so famously made into a Disney movie you may not have even heard of.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, and it wasn't supposed to be that great.
No, it's not. Another favorite of mine by Alexander, while we're on him, is The Remarkable Journey of Prince Jin, which is this mashup of Chinese mythology and stuff. And I loved it. It was weird and creepy and interesting. I liked the moral lessons. I bet I would like them now. I don't think that's 100% favorite. You're always going to get moralizing with Lloyd Alexander, and sometimes it works quite well, especially for younger kids. So anyway, I'm sorry that all sounds so critical, listener, but I am a Lloyd Alexander fan.
No, even just talking about him,
I
have nostalgia for him. I mean, I just remember looking at his books in like Scholastic catalogs and stuff like that. He was just omnipresent in those days.
Yeah. Well, he was always witty, always colorful, always full of invention. Like, he would create worlds very generously, sort of like Baum. Not the same kind of thing, but create characters, create dialogue that was fun. You just have a good time.
Yeah.
He had loads of assets that a lot of you wish other writers had now. A disciplined prose style that's fun to read. Fun to read out loud, I'm certain. Yeah, The First Two Lives of Lucas Kasha is another one of his I recommend. It's very good. It's a more like mature and melancholy kind of kids fantasy. It's about a scamp, like a lot of his books are. But yeah, it's good. It's good. You should read it. All right. Moving on. Another American. Hey, we're getting the Americans in here. So we got Robert O'Brien, Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim. Man, I read this book so many times growing up. I would go back and read it right now. I love it. Love it. Could not get enough of this book or the world. Tried to read the sequel by some lady who maybe he gave his blessing to. She wrote a couple sequels to Rats of Nim. Didn't really do it for me. But this animated movie is pretty awesome.
Yes, that's how I know the property. It is a good movie.
It's kind of awesome. It's different than the book. The book is less fantasy. The book is more a flavor of science fiction fantasy, if you will. In the movie, there's like a magic amulet and stuff. And the book is like, these rats were experimented on in a lab. It was terrible. Mrs. Frisbee's husband, anyway, was one of them. And he's dead now. There's a lot of dark stuff going on here. There's a lot of, kind of like with Watership Down, this feeling of these animals are very fragile and frail. They are menaced by things like, we're going to mow the field. Help, we're going to die. We're just mice. It's going to kill us. We have to get away, but I can't get away. My son is sick. Help. So it makes you feel the fragility of your own life through the fragility of their lives. Watership Down does that. This is not a masterpiece on the level of Watership Down, but I want to say it may be some kind of masterpiece, or it's close. It's really well written. It's gripping. It's strange. It's unexpected. You care about everything. You feel like by the end of the book, you've witnessed the loss of something special because the rats of Nim go away. Anyway, it's got a lot of stuff going on, actually. I wonder if it's underestimated. Maybe I'm overestimating it.
Apparently, I can't quite tell just looking at this cover, but either Newberry or Caldecott thought it was...
Newberry. Caldecott's for illustrations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it's Newberry. O'Brien also wrote The Silver Crown. He only wrote 2 other novels that I'm remembering. Silver Crown and Z for Zechariah. That second one is really weird. It's made into a very sexual-looking movie that's based on the book, which I wouldn't recommend, and I saw the trailer. I was like, no. But Silver Crown is a weird, fairy tale-ish, apocalyptic kind of story that's even darker than Mrs. Frisbee, and I liked it a lot. I haven't gone back to it, but I would read it again. All right, moving on. Man, is this the end of the list?
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Sorry, folks, we're back to the Brits. They've just done a better job. Sorry. I'm not sorry, but more Americans should write stuff that we want to put on a list.
I was trying to think of, I was like, surely in the modern age, and then I was like, nope, J.K. Rowling is the big one, and she's a Brit too. Like, they just have preeminence in this field.
They do, yeah. So you got The Wind in the Willows. Hey, we can't leave that out. So that's more... Anyway, that also... It has a little bit of adventure. It's odd. I never read this growing up. I feel like I read it a couple of years ago for the first time. I don't know why.
I did read it as a young child, and I remember it enormously fondly, but I don't actually, and I have the images in my head, Toad Hall, stuff like that, but I couldn't really even tell you what it's about. I guess he gets in trouble and
he goes
on adventure, not like fighting bad guys adventures, but just like...
He steals a car.
Yeah.
Toad steals a car, and then he gets in jail.
Right.
And he breaks out, or I think he breaks out, and then his friends help him retake Toad Hall, which has been invaded by weasels and things. So there's like a battle scene.
That's right. Yeah.
It's fun. I mean, this book is more like the animals are going to have a dinner party. It's going to be very elegant.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to walk along the banks of the river, and we're going to describe the river. It's very beautiful, and it's very interesting, and it pulls you into another world entirely. It's not nearly as ironic as Milne, but it maybe has more in common with Milne than, say, Watership Down. The animals are dressing up in clothes. They're gentlemen.
Right.
They're English gentlemen.
They're people surrogates more.
That's right.
They're not.
Much more directly. It is beautiful. I'd read it again. I feel like I probably underappreciated it on the first pass. Probably the kind of book I'd want to read out loud with my wife or something. More like Winnie the Pooh. So, very good. I'm just trying to think of anyone that I left off. People suggested a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Some of which we thought of and said no. And some of which we didn't think of, or some of which we don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people said Redwall, to which I agree. I mean, I think Watership Down is the superior work of art, but Redwall, enormous fun. Love it. Love the first, I'd say 5 or 6 books in that series.
Yep. I feel like I read 10 at least, maybe 11. But
yeah, and then it does start to get really repetitive.
Mm-hmm. But it's great.
Yeah, it's great. What were the other things? A lot of people said Susan Cooper. I do not remember. I know a lot of people like Susan Cooper and
The Dark is Rising series.
Yeah, my mom read those and really liked them. When I was like, I read the first one and then she read it and then she kept going. I did not keep going. I think that one was enough for me. I don't remember that much about it. A lot of people said Madeline L'Engle and the Wrinkle in Time stuff, and I realized that is a controversial take because you can go and listen to our book-thing episode and just hear us mock that book. Like, we very much look down on it. And I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. I know people feel a lot of affection for those books. And I did too. I actually have great nostalgia for that book, for the first one in particular. I read it. I loved it. I can picture the cover art, that kind of 60s, psychedelic kind of
Jungian stuff.
Yeah, and just the brain and the city. And there's some really cool stuff in there, but if you go back and you read it now, what I think you'll find, what I found anyway, is that the children protagonists are enormously entitled and unlikable. Charles Wallace in particular is just intolerable. And I mean, just the fact that he's named Charles Wallace and that we keep having to hear the phrase Charles Wallace throughout the novel. And the weird mixing of paganism and Christianity is pretty off-putting. You know, the fact that Jesus in this mythology was one of the prophets of the good force or whatever. He's just one of many, along with Buddha, along with Plato, along with anyone that you happen to like from Western civilization.
Yeah, if you've ever had to read or had someone recommend to you or tried to read any of Lengel's sort of devotional Christian work, you realize that she's evil and off her rock.
Yeah, she's
doctrinally, she's evil. She's just heretically
she's
evil.
Just a Gnostic, basically.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what I think. I have, like I said, I liked it, and it sounds like you liked it too.
I read and I reread those things so many times. The first 3, man, loved them. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend them.
Yeah, but I realize that's going to step on some toes because I know there's people listening right now that remember those things with fondness. Maybe they've given them to their kids. That's all I can say is, man, it did not work for me at all when I went back. People said Wingfeather Saga, which none of us have read.
Nope.
People said Never-Ending Story. Have you done Never-Ending Story?
I actually have never read it. I grew up with the movie and then the sequel.
I know neither the movie nor the book. I can picture images like.
I've heard it's a pretty good book. I haven't heard that it's great, but I'm interested in reading it.
People said Phantom Tollbooth, which I did like as a kid.
I loved that as a kid. I just forgot about it. I don't know if it holds up.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I certainly did like it. I'm trying to see if anything else. Oh, of course, there was one obvious oversight on our part, which was Roald Dahl. We should have included him.
Yeah.
Roald Dahl is great. He hates humanity, and
but it's very funny.
You gotta love it.
Yeah, James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
Charlie and the Great Grass Elevator. I like a lot, even though it's bonkers.
I love that book. That was so much fun.
They go to space. And,
those aliens try to kill them. It's great. It's really great.
Incredibly bizarre. Just to see, there's the people. It's a fun thread. You should go look it up if you're on Twitter. There's a lot of great recommendations.
So, but just to be clear, we should have put on Brian Jacques in the Redwall series.
Yeah,
at least the first few books, and we should have put on Dahl.
Yeah.
So missed those. Sorry.
Yeah. For my money, if you're getting into Redwall, you read the first Redwall book, and that's a pretty perfect book. He has to find the sword of whatever, and it's got a nice mystery element to it that some of the other ones don't have. They just become a little bit more straightforward, questy kind of books. And then I really like the other two that kind of buttress that one, Mossflower and Matimio are a lot of fun. And then he went and filled in some of the backstory with Martin the Warrior and those are all pretty good. But then it just becomes a repetitive, like, another tyrant came and
another hero
arose.
There was more noble sacrifice.
There
were more meals described in great detail that the moles put together.
Yes, he likes his food. Well, and his prose style became stifling by the end. He got more ornate and, I don't know, enamored with his own descriptive powers in a way that I did not find likable. I'm just going through this. I mean, Ben and I are both not H.G. Wells fans, or who's that other guy? Jules Verne's fans. He was mentioned. Terry Brooks. Nope, sorry.
I did read those. I did enjoy them. Some of them read multiple times, maybe even 3 times.
You know who I don't remember well enough? I know many people swear by him, and I know was greatly influential on some of the people that we love, but George MacDonald, I did read The Princess and the Goblin, I think, and I maybe liked it, but I don't have much memory of it now.
I really liked it as a kid. I would be uncomfortable with the grandmother being God.
Yeah.
I think actually a lot of the problems boil down to he doesn't have a hesitation about casting God as a woman.
Yeah, he crosses some weird lines. But there's no denying that he's an effective fantasist in many ways.
A pretty great, just sentence by sentence, a pretty great writer.
Yeah. So, yeah, we approach with caution, but don't begrudge anyone liking him. Yeah, I think that's a lot of the greats.
I mean, there was a mention of Lord Dunsany. I'm underread on my Dunsany. I feel like I've looked at a little bit of him. I know he's influential. I know he's a superb writer, and I'm interested.
Yeah, I recommend Lord Dunsany. I mean, he is awfully... He strives for an effect. Like, he goes way over the top with his language in a way that might be off-putting to some people, but I think it's fun, especially in short doses. I like his short fiction a lot, and his sense of cosmic fantasy is just wonderful. Very influential on people like H.P. Lovecraft, even, who just did the sort of dark version of Dunsany. People recommended Book of the Dun Cow, which is a book that I think Ben and I both have kind of a love. I don't want to say hate.
Not hate.
Love, dislike relationship with.
Yeah, a love queasiness relationship with, I would say.
It's weird. It's a weird parable.
What does it mean?
I still don't know what it means. I've read it not too many years ago as a adult.
I've read it probably 3 times. I've read the sequel probably twice. I don't think I would never give the sequel to my kids. Not ever.
Right.
Nope. And then the main book, I don't know.
It's weird. Anyway, those are some books you can read if your kids are tired of Narnia. Not that you can ever be tired of Narnia. Or, hey, I like Narnia. Or Lord of the Rings, if you're tired of Lord of the Rings. Not that you can ever be tired of Lord. If you've exhausted those and you need some other fantasy novels, I think my personal recommendation from the list would be drop everything and read Diana Wynne Jones. She is so much fun. Such a great writer, and just has a real moral sense. Not a Christian at all, but has delightful characters and situations. And I don't know. I just think she's still underpraised, even I think she's pretty well loved and pretty well known. And but there was a lot of people that responded to the Twitter thread and said, "Howl's Moving Castle is a book? I thought it was just a movie," and that makes me sad.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. Anything else to say about great children's fantasy novels, Ben?
No, I was just trying to think of anyone else. There's a couple of minor people that maybe we'll post about or write about or talk about someday, but no, I caught a lot of it. Caught a lot of authors that I grew up with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I liked some of the things that people mentioned. And yeah, this is the kind of thing where we'll definitely think of something even later today and kick ourselves for not mentioning it, but I can't think of it now.
Nope.
So, all right, we'll be off next week, folks, and then we'll be back with more Sound of Sanity. In the meantime, you can support us at patreon.com/Sound of Sanity. Until next time,
stay sane.